Let's learn how to create an ad for a magazine. In this case, we're going to use a real location. This is the route of the Hiawatha. It's on the Montana-Idaho border. It's an incredible bike trail. I've never been there, but I'm excited to try it out someday. In the meantime, we're going to learn how to work with assets from a real location, how to use a branding that's already been set in place, and create an advertisement for this magazine. Right here called Flathead Living. So this is a real magazine. This is the spring edition that's already out. So you can see what the cover looks like. You can see this is a vertical ad. It's kind of tough to see, but it's kind of an editorial lifestyle magazine. There's a better shot of this tall vertical ad we can create. Or maybe we'll do a full page ad. Here's an example of the ad on the back of the magazine. And so we're going to gather some assets. I've already collected some text that we're going to use for this ad, as well as the dimensions that are required for this magazine. So we'll look at ad specs and following along a very detailed outline of what the ad has to be in order to work with their publication. It's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to learn a lot of great tips and tricks along the way. So let's go ahead and dive right in. To get started with our ad design, we have some very specific ad specifications to follow. So anytime you're designing for a client for an ad, they will hopefully already have this information for you. If not, you can contact whomever will be printing this ad to get this information. So we can create any one of these sizes you want if you want to follow along with the assets I provide and make something different. I'm going to show you how to create a full page ad just because I want to show you some different terms like trim, safety, and bleed. I'm going to zoom in real quick so we can see what this means here. All right, so starting with the bleed size, this is the actual size of the document we're going to be creating. We'll go ahead and use Photoshop for this. You could create the ad in Illustrator or InDesign. I feel like I have more design control in Photoshop, so that's what I'll be using today. That dotted line represents how big the file will be. This blue line, this trim size, represents how big the page will actually be once they trim it back. And we print beyond the border with what we call a bleed. It bleeds past, so that when we trim it, there's full color all the way to the edge. If we missed that trim, let's say we were going to cut right on that blue line, but we didn't have any artwork going past it, there's a chance if they're off even just a touch, you'll have a little bit of white on that edge, which is why we do a bleed. We bleed past, so there's plenty of room for margin and for error for the pages to slip around a little bit in production. The next is the live/safety area, and what that means is this red line represents anything that you don't want to get accidentally either cropped off or maybe hidden. Especially let's say this is a full page ad and it's the spine is down the left hand side. Well, because of where the gluing is on the book and how it's produced, it might be difficult to read anything beyond this red line. It might get stuck in that fold a little bit, or vice versa. If this sits on the left hand side and this spine's on the right, same thing over here. So this red line just represents kind of your fence, your safety area to stay within so you don't lose important contact information or other details, other content. So what I typically do, you can design past this with like a full color image or whatever, but any text, any web addresses or phone numbers stay within that red box. All right, so let's set up our file. The bleed size, so it's 8.625 inches wide. We do width by height, so it's always width by height here. Command C to copy that. We'll jump into Photoshop and create a brand new document. So I'm going to hit Command N to open up my new document window. Make sure you're using inches. Our width is 8.625 inches wide. Then let's jump back over to our PDF document here. And the next one is 11.125 inches. So that is our height, 11.125 inches. 300 DPI, and we have our CMYK file set up, so we're good to go. I'll hit OK. And now the first thing I always do when I get this far is hit Command S to save this document, or save as if it's the first time you've done it. And I'll just throw this on my desktop for right now, and we'll call this mountain bike full page ad. I'll hit save. All right, now we've got our document set up, but what I like to do is actually set up my guides as well. So the next area we need to do is our live safety area to know where that bound is going to be. So I'm going to make a 7.125 inch box by 10.125, or 10, and that's 1/8 of an inch. So let's jump over to Photoshop, and I will create a new shape using my rectangle tool. I'll click and drag. It doesn't matter how big it is, because what I'm going to do is hit Command T to free transform this. And by default, it uses a percentage, but we can actually key in a physical dimension. So that was 7.125, and now if I type IN for inches, it'll force that to be inches. And let's look at this just to make sure. It was 7.125 by 10.125. So I'll make this height as 10.125 IN for inches. I'll hit return. Actually, I'll hit the enter key on my keyboard. And now I'll hit Command A to highlight my whole canvas area, which gives me these align options here at the top, and I'll align it vertically and horizontally. And now what I'll do is I'll jump into my layers panel here. My artboard's kind of, or my windows are kind of a mess, so I'm going to reset my essentials workspace. There we go. Let's drag this layers out here, and I'm going to, with this still marching ants selected here, I'm going to hit Command D to make to deselect my selection. Make sure this layer is selected, and if you don't see these numbers across the top, that's your ruler. I'm going to hit Command R, or go to View, and down here to Rulers. Let's turn on your rulers, because now we can drag down guides. Also make sure that you have Snap turned on, and what that'll do with this layer selected, we can drag down our guides, and it'll snap to whichever layer selected there. I can click and drag and now hold Alt to change it to a vertical ruler, or just drag out from the left-hand side here. So all I'm doing are creating guides for myself, and I'll rename this and I'll call it Safety. That way I know what my safety guide is. And then I'm going to duplicate this, Command J to jump cut it, and I'm just going to hit Alt Delete to fill it with black. It's just what happened to be on my foreground color. That way I see both versions here. And now I'm going to come back over to my Acrobat PDF here, and let's look at the trim size. So the trim size is 8.375 inches. So I'll just copy that by 10.875. So I'll come back into Photoshop, click once on this safety layer. I'm going to rename this to trim. I'll hit Command T to resize it, and that width was 8.375. And make sure I type inches, or it's going to think that's a percentage. See how skinny that is? It thinks it's 8%, but I want it inches, so I'll do that. And then the height was, just double check one more time, 10.875. We'll paste that in, and again, make sure you put in inches. Hit return. All right, and now I know it's centered, but just to make sure, I'll hit Command A to highlight my whole canvas here. And now I'm going to align that layer to the canvas. Command D to deselect. And then I'm going to hit Command left bracket key just to put that behind. So we can see the red is our safety, so any content we don't want accidentally cropped off or hidden in the fold goes in there. And then the black layer is our trim, so I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to drag in some guides, make sure that layer is selected so it snaps right to it. And the reason why we're doing this is because I don't want to have to keep that red and black box in here for right now. This was just to help me set up my guides. Now I can Command click, get both of those selected and put them in a folder, or hit Command G to group them. We'll just call this guides. Now I can turn this layer off, but I can still see my guide. So I know anything beyond this top guide is going to get completely cut off, and then anything in this area is going to be printed. But if we want to keep it safe, we keep it within these guides. Hopefully that makes sense, but now we're set up and ready to start collecting our assets for this file. So go ahead and save that one more time, and in the next lesson we'll start pulling in our assets. So now we've got our file set up, it's time to start gathering the things we need to create the ad. Now sometimes you have clients who are on top of it, and they'll provide absolutely everything you need, like their logo and photos and text, etc. And sometimes you have clients where they need a little more hand holding, and they need you to create the graphics for them. Since you're the graphic designer, that would make sense. So what do you do when you have a mixture of both and you need to get some of those assets? Well, let's see what assets we do have. I'll start here. I do have this text that we created. So we've got the title, and we've got some details, bullet list, and then information about where to find them online, things like that. That's great, but I have no images to work with. Well, luckily they do have a website, so I can jump to their website and see what images I can work from, or at least if I'm going to buy stock photography, what kind of images I need to try and find. So one thing to be careful of, if you're making a print ad, just about any photo you find online probably won't work, because when you go to print it, it won't look good because it's too low quality. We call it low res. It's not going to be a big enough file to print. So, but let's just poke around and see what we've got going on. I know I don't have this logo, so I'm going to go ahead and just drag this over to my assets folder here. So let's just click once and drag over to Finder. I'll hold there for a second, and I'll jump over here. And I'll just stash this into my Photos folder for now. So that brought in their logo. Now again, see, this is 32 kilobytes. It's tiny. It probably won't even work at all, but for the sake of the ad, we'll pretend like they give us a high-res version to work with. So we'll drop that in there. And then looking at what this area is, if we jump over to media, you're welcome to watch the video. They do have a video on it, but you can get a really good idea and understanding that it's downhill the entire way. It's only about a 2% or less grade. So when it comes time to find images, if we can't find media that we can work with out of their photo gallery, which we'll come back here and pull some, but as we're looking for stock photos, what that tells me is images like this, where we have a serious mountain biker either doing tricks or going uphill, really doesn't make sense. It's not that kind of a trail. This one might be okay, but it's not that flattering. We don't want to look at the back end of people. We want to look at probably the faces of people having fun. And again, this landscape doesn't match. It's a cool photo, but it's not the right setting. So as we start to look through and pick stock photos, if we need to rely on a stock photo, we have to be careful that it matches with the setting and the scenery and what we're trying to convey as far as the message. So that being said, I've actually found a couple that might make sense. So what I'm going to do here is just grab a couple of them. You know, this one might not be the best photo for a couple reasons. One, I don't have a lot of space around the photo to work with, and it's a little cheesy. It does definitely feel like a canned, stock photo. But what we'll do is we're going to save a preview. So I'm going to click on this twirl down arrow, and I'm going to create a new library here, and we'll call it the Hiawatha, and I'll just call it that so that way I know what it is. I'll add that rather, and now it's saving that comp. One thing I forgot to mention as I just dove in here, I just went to stock.adobe.com to open up that page and started searching for images. So you can search that way, or you can search for images right within Photoshop. So now when I come back to my libraries here, I can automatically see that new folder or that new library I created is right in here under my libraries window, and I can search Adobe stock right from in here. So I can search for mountain bike, and it's going to give me results right within the Adobe Photoshop libraries window. So let's say, just again for the sake of the exercise here, maybe we wanted to add one of these. Let me see if I can find one real quick that might make sense here without taking too much time. Maybe this one, and what I'll do is I have the save preview, or I have the license option. Well, we don't want to buy it yet, so we're just going to hit this little cloud icon to save a preview, and now I've got 2 stock photos to work with. All right, now let's keep going. Let's go grab some more photos. I'll jump back over to their website, and I can see that they do have a gallery. So let's just see if any of these make sense. I'm just going to click on a couple of them here, and I'll right click, and if I can, I'll hit save image as. Some websites you can do that, others you can't see it. I will save it to my, let's create a new folder on my desktop, and we'll just call it photos for now as I just start scraping some stuff and dropping it in there. I'll hit save. And maybe this nice mountain photo. Now, this doesn't advertise as well for us because there's no bikers on it. So at a glance, it doesn't really convey the message or the story we're looking for, but we'll throw it in there. And maybe one more. I know they talk a lot about the tunnels and stuff, so let's just see if this one. So we've got happy bike riders. We've got a bike trailer for a kid, so that tells us it's a kid-friendly, family-friendly ride. So that might be a good image as well. So we'll save this image. All right, so let's say that was a strikeout. Let's say we didn't get the photos we want. Well, luckily they do have Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. So I opened up their Instagram and found a couple more photos that might work. On Instagram, we can't right click and save as. It gives us just the HTML file. It kind of protects it from scraping content, but we can take a screenshot. So Command Shift and the number 4 to click and drag and make a screenshot there. That'll just throw the screenshot right on my desktop. So if I go to my desktop right here, we can see that new screenshot that I just took. I'll drag that into my photos folder. And then on Facebook, we can, kind of quickly scroll through and see if there's any good images that we want to pull from. Here's kind of an interesting one. Looking down off of one of those bridges, I'll right click, save image as, and I'll throw that in that photos folder as well. All right, so now we've kind of gathered our photos to work with. Next, what I want to do is look at some of the overall branding. So there's a cool app I like to use. I don't know if you call it an app. I guess it's an extension for your browser, and they have it for Safari and Chrome that I know of for sure. I haven't tried it in the other browsers, but to know what fonts they're using for their website and their branding. So I have this little extension called What Font. I can click on that, and now I can start typing or clicking anywhere on their website to see what fonts they're using. So it looks like they're using Oswald, and that's the color. They're also using this one. I've never seen that one before, but Yanone. Anyway, so we can do some research and try and find these fonts. In this case, I'll probably just stick with Oswald because I know we have access to that with the Google Fonts library. And if you want to get that extension, go ahead and search for What Font extension, and you can see it here. Just add it to Chrome, and then you'll have this little icon, and you can jump on any website and see what font they're using for different things. So I'll click on that What Font, and you can see Instagram uses Proxima Nova. So that's a great little extension. I use it all the time, and when you're done, you can just hit exit up here or just hit the escape key. All right, so we've gathered our assets, we've got our text, we've got our logo, and we have some photo ideas. So in the next lesson, we're going to go ahead and start pushing some pixels around. I went ahead and grabbed a few more photos that I thought might be helpful and found a couple more stock photos as well. So what we're going to do in this lesson is bring in those photos, start gathering our text, and just kind of roughly getting things in place. That's all we're going to focus on right now. So here's a few more of the photos I found, and they're okay. Some of them are pretty grainy because we did grab them from the web, but some of them look a lot better. And like this one, little kid having a good time. He's got his headlamp on for those tunnels. And this one at the entrance, and another one, smiling kid. Again, this really speaks to the ad as far as it's family friendly, which is I know what we're going for here. And then I found a few more stock photos as well. I'm in my library. I'll just drag this right over into my document, and you can see this is another one I found actually on Adobe Stock, which I was surprised. If this isn't the right park, it sure looks a lot like it. So I figured it's a good one to use. And I have another one here of them entering into the tunnel. It's not as close to what I'm looking for though, because again, their backs to the camera. I want to see faces, and all that black again isn't that flattering, but we could do an ad that speaks to the tunnels and stuff as well. And so what I want to do now is just start working with this, and I like this image. The reason why is it gives me a lot of space to work with. To drop text over the top, it really shows off the landscape and how pretty it is there. So we'll start here, and what I did, I just drug a copy of this over into my canvas here, my artboard, sorry, and you see this little cloud here on the icon. That tells me this is part of one of my cloud assets. So I can apply filters and things, and I can modify this, and I'm not committed to this photo yet. Obviously it still has the watermark, but as soon as we get approval from the client that this is the ad they want to roll with, all I need to do is license this in my library, right click, license image, and then that watermark will go away. So we can do all these adjustments, and then at the end of this thing license this, or maybe we'll get another idea down the road and use an entirely different image. So what I do now, I'm just going to bring this in and start resizing things, scaling it up, and seeing what I have to work with. And I can bring this up if I wanted to. That number will go away as well when we license this image. I kind of like the idea of putting them on what would be the ground of this ad, and then having lots of headspace to bring in our text. So I'm going to go ahead and hit return to commit that change here. And let's dive in and grab our bike assets here for the text. And I'll work a couple different ways. Typically, I'll bring this in line by line. So for this mountain bike top 10 pick, I'll just grab that whole line of text, Command C to copy. I'll come in here with my type tool. I'll change my fill to white. Click once and paste. It came in really small, so I hit Command T to free transform to bump this up. Okay, and that's not the font I want to use. I'm going to use Oswald. And I don't have this on my system, so this is a great time to see if this is in Typekit. I'll do a quick search, and it's not in here, and I already knew it wouldn't be, but this was a good exercise. What happens if it's not in here? Well, let's do a Google search for it. And I already know it's going to be in Font Squirrel or as a Google font. Here we could do either one. I'll just show you Font Squirrel since it's here. This is another great resource for free fonts that you can use in any project. So here's Oswald. I'll go ahead and download this TrueType font. That's what TTF stands for, is TrueType font. And once it downloads, I'll click once to unzip the file. I'll highlight all of these, hit Command O to open them all at once, and then install the font. So once I have that font installed, I'll go ahead and jump back over into Photoshop and see if it picks it up right away, or if I need to close and reopen it. There it is, Oswald. Now that's Oswald Stencil Bold. So this is close enough to that website font, so I'll just drop this in for right now as a placeholder to get our title in there. And then I'm going to start bringing in the other assets here. Now for the bullet points, because we can't really do bullet points in InDesign, I'm going to show you a little trick here on how I use a system called Font Awesome. It's just another font that lets me do icons and bullet points, etc. So we're going to do that once we get our text in here. We'll come back to that to get those bullet points. So I'm just copying and pasting, and then Command T to get my free transform, just to scale stuff up a little bit and get it close to what I'm looking for here. Let me go ahead and just hit fast forward here so you don't have to sit here and watch this whole thing. Alright, here we go. As you can see, we have a lot of content to try and gracefully place in this ad without it looking too busy. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save, Command S on my computer here, so that way at least we save where we're at. And in the next lesson, we're going to go ahead and refine this layout a little bit further. In the last video, we got our photo in place and some of the content ready to go. I had a little issue with that font, with that Oswald font. It brought in the stencil version. So real quick to fix that, because we're going to want to have that. When I installed the font, it brought in the one font, but I needed to close that, come back in and install each version individually. So that's what happened there. I've already done that. I got little yellow check marks giving me errors because I've already done it once, but that's what happened here in case you got stuck at that point. So I'm just going to click on that, triple click, and then we're going to change this font from Oswald Stencil to, let's see what Oswald Heavy, Bold. Bold is probably a good one to use. And now what I'm going to do is hit Command Shift and the letter K, which is going to change this to the all caps version of that. I'll hit enter on my keyboard to commit that text here. And what I want to do is I need to figure out what my #1 message is going to be. Do we want to do mountain bike top 10 pick or ride the Hiawatha, right? So what I'm thinking is that most people probably have never heard of this trail, at least not yet, but they have heard of USA Today. So for me, the biggest elements, if we're going to have some sort of structure, hierarchical structure, is we need to figure out what is the #1 message. Everything can't be the same volume. Right now, if we spit this ad out like this, it looks terrible and it's really hard to digest. Obviously, I mean, for one, the text is right over their face, but the text is all the same size. So everything is the same volume and it's all loud. It's all bold, it's all caps. So we need to go through and refine this a little bit. So what I'm going to do is just put this on 2 lines and hit Command A to highlight all of it, and then I'm going to change my leading by holding down Command, Option, and the down arrow key to kind of jump it down. And if it goes more than you want, we can refine that further by going to our character panel. I'm just going to dock this layers panel back over here. And I don't see my character, so what I'm going to do is come over here to Window, come down here to Character. There it is. It was hiding right there. And so now I can come and refine this. So by hitting the up and down, Command Alt up and down, it was jumping. You can see over here between 11 and 40. Well, that's too much of a jump. I want a kind of a happy medium. So I'll just key it in right here. I'll triple click and let's try 20. That's not quite right. Although that is kind of cool. So I'll leave it like that. I'll hit Enter. Command T to make this even bigger. And maybe not as cool as I thought. Let's go ahead and give this more space. I'm just going to hit the up arrow keys and just kind of nudge it down until I'm happy with it. That looks pretty good right there. Let's see, mountain bike top 10 pick. I'm trying to decide if I want mountain bike to be huge or if I want USA Today to be huge. So I'm going to do top 10 pick up in one line here. Hit return and scale this back down just a touch. All right, mountain bike top 10 pick. Now I'm just going to triple click this first line, hit Command Shift and the comma key to kind of step this up bigger or smaller. And again, I'm having the same issue where it's jumping more than I want it to. So I might triple click in here and just hit 40 for my point size. And remember, these guides, these are my safety. Technically, it'll print all the way out to here. Anything past that line gets cut off, but to keep it safe and make sure that nothing gets lost, I'm just going to keep within these guides here. And I might change this to center it, drag this back over. So we're getting closer here. And seeing how this is starting to play out, I think I changed my mind again, and so I'm just going to put this back on this line, hit space, and then hit my forward delete key to bring that back in place. And now what I can do is change the weight of this font. Right now it's set to bold. Let's try light and see what happens there. I like that better. So I'm going to click on this and make it bigger, Command Shift and the period key to step that up a little bit. Now to get it exactly the width I want, I'll hit Command T and just scale it up just a touch so it's exactly that size. And then I'll triple click here, and I'm going to change the tracking or the kerning, whatever you want to call it. Command Alt right arrow to kind of step it out a little bit. And it did pretty good. I got it almost exactly where I want it. And you can see right now that tracking is set to 240. If I wanted to, I could refine that a little bit further, but I'll call it good for now and I'll hit enter. So I'm pretty happy with that title at the moment. You know, the other thing I might change, if I go back to their website here, they're not really using the italic version. They're using the non-italic, the regular version. So I'll jump back over into Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and triple click this top text, click on my drop down for my font, and I'm just going to hover to kind of see which one I want here, because it looks like the names aren't very helpful. For example, I'm seeing Oswald Demi Bold here, but that's an italic or oblique font, and the one right below it is regular. So obviously the naming didn't help me out too much here, the way this font came in. So I'm going to just kind of hover till I get the one I want. I like that super bold, so Oswald Heavy. I'll click on that. And I'll triple click on this line below it. And I like the italic or the oblique version better, but again, we're trying to match the branding and kind of keep it all consistent here. So I'm just going to scroll. There we go. That one looks pretty good. So this is Oswald Extra Light. I'll click once on there. All right, we're getting there. Triple click here, Command Shift and left comma key. That's too small. Right comma is too big. So we're between 50 and 57 points. So I'm just going to triple click in here. Let's go 55. How about 56, 57, I'll do 56. All right, that looks good to me. And this bottom one, triple click to grab that. Let's put it at 43 where I thought I saw it. Let's go down a little bit to 40. All right, and as you can see, you can just nudge and chip away at this stuff way more than you need to. So I'm just going to get it close, call it good. I don't want to bore you too much. All right, so we got our title in. That took a little bit of time here, but I'm happy with it. And let's see what else we can do here. All right, so let's work on the bullet list. Actually, let's work on this and the bullet list here. So I've got my list. I'm going to triple click on that. Actually, that didn't work, so I'm just going to click once in here and Command A to get everything. And let's change our leading up here to auto, which will put it to the font's default height. We'll start there. And then we need to find a secondary font. So maybe we'll use this Oswald that we used up here. Let's just look at this one more time. This is Extra Light. So I'm going to click back in here, Command A to highlight all of that. And let's find this Extra Light. Now, the problem or something we need to be careful of, let's see, maybe we'll use medium instead, is that where you're printing white on top of a color, so the ink around it is going, you know, as we print this, the ink is going to want to try and bleed in towards these areas. So sometimes if you're going to do a reverse out like this, you want to have a little bit of a heavier font, especially if this is going to get much smaller, which we are going to make it smaller. Right now it's at 13 point. Let's go ahead and put it up to 14. We'll call it good. I know that's going to be a really good size for us. And then highlight this, and I'm going to change from auto to, I'm just going to hit Command Option and the down arrow to see where it jumps to. That's way too much, so let's put it back to like 25, and we'll start there. So I just wanted to space it out just a little bit just to give it some breathing room here. And now in the next section, what we're going to do is use a font called Font Awesome. So I'm just going to bring that in the next video so we can create some icons for this bullet list. All right, for this section here, we're going to take a tiny detour and talk about bullet lists in Photoshop. because you really can't do a true bullet list in Photoshop without some, magic fine tuning here. This is where InDesign would have been a much better choice for layout because of the way InDesign handles text and can do things like that. But I would prefer the power of Photoshop for everything else, so I'm willing to work with this bullet list. So what we're going to do is, if we wanted to just straight up make a bullet list, I'll click in there and hold on the Alt key and hit the number 8. So Alt 8 gives me that traditional bullet point character. Okay, so I could come in here, Command C to copy, and then just click and paste, Command V to paste in front of each line, which is fine. It's not ideal way to work. And the other thing I notice here too is I auto corrected this when I type this up. So let's change this to Rails. It's Rails to Trails. Okay, that's where we converted a bunch of train tracks into trails for people. So anyway, so we got our bullet lists in, which is fine, but I mean, it's not that compelling yet. So what I want to show you is this thing called Font Awesome. So go ahead and Google Font Awesome, and it's going to be the top result up here. And then it's got this big download button right here in the middle. We'll click on that, and they're going to try and take you to Fort Awesome, which is a really cool service you can check out later, but it is a subscription-based service, so we don't really care about that right now. No thanks. We just want to download Font Awesome. So once that's done downloading, you're going to get a zipped folder, and inside that is the font we want to use to install. So I'll go ahead and unzip this folder here in my downloads. And when it opens up, we're just looking for the font. So we'll click on the fonts folder and then install this TTF file, this true type font, and then you should be good to go. You have the font installed. Next, we want to take a look at the actual Font Awesome cheat sheet. So just Google Font Awesome cheat sheet, and you should find this. And this is a reference of all the glyphs or the characters within that font. So what I'm looking for is something with a little more style. So I'm just going to grab this double right angle bracket. I'll hit Command C to copy that glyph I mean. I will jump over to Photoshop and I will highlight this bullet character and hit Command V to paste. Now, what happened here? We see this little box with an X through it. Well, Photoshop doesn't know how to display this, so it tries to, we were using Oswald, but it just defaults to Myriad Pro trying to help us out because it doesn't have that glyph character in the library. It doesn't know what to do with it. But once you've installed Font Awesome, we can just search for Font Awesome up here, click on that, and now it displays that image just like we wanted to. And the reason why I had you pull up the cheat sheet is you can see there are a lot more icons we could use, such as this mountain one I just copied. So all downhill, this is actually let me just let's see a better way to work. Well, we'll just click right here and do Font Awesome again. We'll click on that. This is actually a graph, but you know what? It's pretty close. It could work for an all downhill situation. So what I would do if I was going to apply more of these, I'll just highlight that, Command C to copy, and then paste these in. And then if I wanted to bring in, say, a unique one for each one, I'm just going to grab any of them real quick for the sake of the demo. Now that this is already Font Awesome, I can Command Paste, and it'll keep that font for it. So anyway, so that's our bullet characters. Now the next part of this is actually styling our list in a way where it works if we had more content. So what I mean by that, let's say we wanted this to be on 2 lines of text. Well, if I click in here and hit return, it's going to change the whole paragraph. Let's change this leading here. It's going to bump this down, but I want this text to stay up top right next to it. So I'm going to click once here, hit delete. Now I'm going to hit shift return. And now what I can do is change my leading for this line to get it how I want. Let's tighten that up just a little bit more here. So all I'm really worried about now is how these first 2 lines of text work. And again, I hit shift return, not just regular return. Now I'll highlight all of these. I'm going to jump over to my paragraph tab. And now I'm going to add space between each paragraph. So as I scrub this down, you'll notice that the leading stays the same, but the paragraphs jump. So it doesn't see this as a paragraph. It sees it as 2 lines of text since I hit that force break, that force return by holding shift return. Okay, and now I can space these out. So it just looks better. Now the next thing we need to address is I don't like how this text jumps underneath the bullet character. I want it to fall between the next line. So I hit Command A. And I'm going to scrub, let's see, we're going to play with this just a little bit here. I'm going to scrub this top line negative until it falls in line with the text below it. So that's a little bit better here. I'll go ahead and hit return, and that is how I would create my bullet list. Now you'll notice one other thing is depending on where your text falls with other text below it, let's say we're not using a bullet list in the next line, we can control where it falls by scrubbing this other text indent line up here. So you can really refine and tweak this to your liking, but it's just the workaround that I've learned how to do in Photoshop, and hopefully there's got to be a better way, but that's the workaround I use for right now. So there we go. In the next lesson, we're going to go ahead and refine our ad, get it finalized here, and get it to print. All right, now we just need to do a couple more things to get our ad in place, looking good. And I won't go through everything. I don't want to bore you, but I will go through the few little finishing touches here, and then I'll show you what I come up with for the final ad and how to export it. So what we're going to do right now, again, we need to continue with our structure here. We need to find a home for this text down here, and I don't really want this bullet list hanging out in the trees. So I'm going to click once on this photo, hit Command T, and I can see that I have a lot more photo below here. In fact, let me undo that, or just hit return. I'm going to hit the letter F, which cycles through my screen mode. So we were right here on this first one. There's 3 different views. I'm going to hit F to get to the next one, and that way I can actually scroll up a little bit and see more. Now I'm going to hit Command T. Anyway, I can see here that there's a lot more image down below. So what I'm going to do is click and drag up a little bit, holding Shift, and that way it keeps it in a straight line. So I want enough space below to kind of put my text here, but not lose a lot of what's going on up here. So now I'll hit return or hit enter to commit that transition, that transform. And ride the Hiawatha. This probably needs to be in there, but it doesn't need to be that huge. So I'll bring this down a little bit. And I'm going to play with this title. And a cool effect you can play with is the blend mode. So with this title selected, I'm going to double click, not on the name, I don't want to rename it, and I don't want to edit the text, but I kind of off to the side on that layer, I'm going to double click and it'll bring up my layer style. And what I can do is change how it blends with the underlying layer. So I'm going to bring this dark up a little bit, and what's going to happen is it's going to start cutting into my text. Pretty cool, huh? So, sorry, that was super cheesy, but it's really cool. So I'm going to drag this back just a little bit. I'm going to hold down Alt and split those so I can kind of get more of a smooth transition here between the darks and the lights, and bring it right about there. Awesome. Love it. I think it's great. We'll leave it like that. Just to add some visual interest, maybe nudge it up just a touch here. There we go. Just little things like that kind of help your ad stand out. So now I'm going to work on this text a little bit, and we could do the same thing here where we knock out the text behind their helmets, maybe with a mask. So I could click right here, bring it down, click once, make sure we're on that layer, and then click down here on this mask. So we're going to add a mask to it. So anything I paint with black will hide, anything white will reveal. So we're painting with black on top. I'll hit B to get my brush tool, hit the left bracket key, the one next to the letter P, and now I can, to size it smaller, and now I can kind of paint over this to bring his head back in front of the text. And this is just a quick selection here, so you'll see my text isn't affected. I've just got a mask going on. If I hold on Shift and click on it, it turns that off. So it's just a way to bring them in front of that text here. And I don't like this list up top. I'd rather it be down a little bit. So we can bring all these down below and start making them smaller and refining the layout a little bit more. And then the next thing I'll probably want to do is we could leave it like that, leave it nice and big and bold and beautiful as far as the image is concerned, kind of uncluttered. I'll clean this up a little bit and I'll show you what I come up with. Or we could maybe add more photos in here. So what I might do is I'll hit the letter U to get my rectangle tool, and it doesn't matter what color I'm drawing with. I just want to draw a few rectangles in here. Now hold on Alt, click and drag, holding down Shift to drag a copy perfectly centered. Alt Shift and then click. Now I've got 3 boxes. I'll Shift click all of them, Command T, and drag it up to fit within my guides here. So now I've got boxes that I can use as a mask. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to jump over to that ad real quick. And I just jumped into that photos folder that we had earlier because I want to grab some photos that kind of show off what the trail really is. So here's a nice one where you can really see one of those sky bridges. So I'm going to click once on this rectangle. I want to put that one in the middle. I'll jump back over to Finder and I'll click and drag over into here. And I'll scale it down just a little bit. I'll hit return. And now coming over into my layers panel, I'm going to hold between those layers, hold down the Alt key, and then click, and the layer above will be masked by the layer below. So there's one image in there, and I can scale it to however I want. And now let's grab a couple more real quick. I'm going to grab one for the left side, so I'll click on that, so I'm right there. That way when I bring in my photo, it'll come in right above that shape. So here's another nice one. I'll click and drag over there. Hold on Shift and click. There we go. Hold on Alt to mask that, and I can refine this so that you'll notice the mask shape stays still, but I can scale and transform the shape to fit. And now here, let's grab another one. And I could grab that one. It looks a lot like the other ones we have. Maybe we'll grab one of this kid. Let's see which one do I want to use. How about, yeah, we'll use this guy. All right, here we go. I'm just going to click one more time, make sure I'm on that rectangle layer, so when I bring that photo in, it's at the top. Resize it a little bit. Hit return. Hold on Alt and click between to mask it. And now I've got 3 images right across the top. Now the next issue is they don't really stand out, and they blend in pretty closely because of the trees behind it. So there's a couple solutions we can do. One would be to maybe put a stroke around it. So I'll click on that rectangle layer, and then I'll double click off to the side here, and I will add a stroke layer style, and we can see it adds a nice stroke. Maybe I'll change the size of it, and we can play with some different options there, but I'll leave that alone for now. And then I can take that layer style, we can turn that on and off. So we just added a layer style to that shape. I can hold on Alt on that effects layer, click and drag down to the next one, and automatically apply it to the next layer. Another way to do that is to right click, copy shape attributes, or copy layer style. Actually, this is a layer style. Click back on this other shape that doesn't have it yet, right click, and we want to paste the layer style. There we go. So a couple ways to work there. So that's one way to set these images off from the background. Another way we could do it would be to come back and grab these, and I'm having a hard time seeing all my layers, so I'm just going to tear this out. And we can shift click between all those layers and put them in their own folder. And I could apply maybe a drop shadow to help it stand off a little bit further. And it's kind of tough to see right now. I can make it a little bit darker, maybe make it spread out a little bit more, and you're starting to see where it adds that drop shadow. Now personally, I'm not a huge fan of where this is going, but I did want to show you at least one way you can make this stand off of the background. So I'm going to turn off that drop shadow, though I don't like where it's going. Maybe we put a layer below it. So I'll command click. That way I get a layer below the one I had selected. And maybe I will put some sort of shape behind there. So maybe I'll draw a selection here and hit D to get my default colors, and hit command delete to fill it with my background color. And now it's filled with a white bar. So also not quite the right fit for this. So let me jump over to their website real quick. Let's see what they did. They have, you know, this nice texture in the background. So we could mimic that texture or find something really similar. I'm going to exit what font here. But I'm just going to take a quick screenshot just to kind of grab it as a sample. Command Shift and Command Shift number 4. And then if I hold the space bar, I can move the selection around to get it perfect. I'm just going to hold down Control to copy it to my clipboard. Come back over here, Command V to paste it, Command T to free transform. I'm going to rotate it, holding down Shift so it's perfectly at 90-degree angles. And I'm going to scale it up a little bit. So this might not print that well, but at least I can see if it's a direction I want to pursue, if this is going to work and help make it stand off a little bit. So that's another way we can do that. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and pause this video. I've given you a lot of tips and tricks. I'm just going to work through this ad, kind of finish it up to where I would want to ship it, and then I'll bring it back up and we can learn how to export this for press. All right, so I've got the final ad here, and what I'm going to do in this video is show you how to get rid of that Adobe stock watermark in the background, and then how to export this for press. At the end of the video, we'll do a quick rundown on the design decisions that I made. So first things first, let's go ahead and get rid of this Adobe stock logo right here. So what I'm going to do is click once on that layer to get my mountain biking image selected. Now, because I never rasterized or flattened this layer, it still has that tiny little cloud icon at the bottom right. What that means is it's still syncing to the cloud as a smart object. So what I can do is in my library up here, I can right click on that image, click on license image. Then it's going to ask me if I want to use one of my licenses that I have available. And I'm going to go ahead and click on the OK button. And now it's going to start syncing right here. It'll show a little check mark that this is indeed licensed. And then as soon as it's done syncing, it's going to automatically take that watermark off of my background image. There we go. Just like that, the watermark is gone. I've purchased that image, and now it's going to be a high-res image that I can use when sending this to press. So how do we send this to press? Actually, it's pretty simple. What I do, first and foremost, though, I'll come up here to Layers, and I'm going to click on Flatten Image. And the reason why, I'll go ahead and discard hidden layers here. And the reason why is I don't want the text to accidentally get moved, or I don't want to have to worry about the printer having the right font to print this or anything happening. I want to send this as a flat image. That way there's no chance that anything gets messed up once I send this out. I know that everything is exactly how I want it. So I flatten this image. I'll go to File. I'll go down to Save As. And typically the best file format for print is going to be a PDF in this case. So I'll choose PDF. Actually, in this case, it's Photoshop PDF from my format bar. And I'll just save this right to my desktop for now. And again, it's mountain bike full page ad dash final. I'll go ahead and hit save, making sure that we've got this color profile selected. And that's it. You've just created your first ad. Oh, one more thing here. Let's go ahead and turn off preserve Photoshop editing capabilities. We don't need that in this case, so I'll turn that off. I'll go ahead and hit save PDF. And there we go. Now that's it. So we have our new PDF file that'll be saved to the desktop, and you're good to go. You've made your first ad. So congratulations. All right, now let's take a look at this ad from the perspective of a graphic designer and marketing in mind. So I think it's an effective ad in that it right off the top, you know it's about mountain biking. You know the word Hiawatha is obviously like that's what this place is. And then on the bottom right, the call to action, you know, if you need more information, here's the phone number. And we've got all the social media icons on the left. So that's all great. Like from the perspective of what an ad needs to do, it's working great. Now, a couple design decisions that I wish I could have done a little bit better would be, number one, is always pay attention to your hierarchy or your hierarchical structure. You can't have the same volume on everything, right? So what I mean by that is this title mountain bike is almost the same size as Hiawatha, but there's a conflict here because the word mountain bike is at the top. Reread top down, right, left to right. So since this is at the top, we see that first, but our eye is fighting to want to read the word Hiawatha down here. The other issue is because we have people in our ad, we are by nature, when we see people, we'll look at them first, almost always. And so we've got these people, but they're tiny down here and the title's big. So there's a lot of motion and movement in the ad, which is fine. But typically I like to pick one thing and make it the complete focus. So it's okay, but I feel like I could have pushed this a little bit further, and that's where you as a designer have to decide where you're going to spend your time, right? So sometimes budget or timing just doesn't allow you to pursue all of the design looks you want. So anyway, that's how I ended up with this look. And then down here, the rest of it is just making the text fit in a way where you're happy with the negative space and where it lays out. So for example, this chunk of text right here, it flows kind of nicely around where his hand is and where his feet. The negative space is really nice. It's a good balance between the space above this line here on the horizon and the footer. So I'm pretty happy with where the elements line up, and if I turn my guides on, you see everything lines up really well. So pay attention to the elements on a page and how they all come together. Like down here, that guide is carried all the way down to where my text falls on the right and on the left. So I always pay pretty close attention to that. Now I'm aligning this text down here across the bottom guide where my safety is. That logo kind of creeps past it a touch. And this text over here is lined up centered to this logo, just trying to give it as much balance as possible. So these are little design decisions that you'll have to make as you work through things. Don't let stuff just fall on a page and not make a conscious decision about where it's at. Now the other thing I did bring in some custom brushes, and basically this layer right here is just, it's got a light brown texture over the top of my dark brown footer that has kind of a roughed up edge. So that was just using custom brushes in Photoshop, nothing too crazy or fancy. And feel free to download this file in the assets folder and you can pick it apart and see how I made it. So hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully you enjoyed this section, and thanks for watching. So I showed you how to make a press ready file, but now I want to show you how to share the design file, the editable file. So really the main thing I want to show you is that because we used an Adobe stock image, it's actually linked through the cloud. So I've got this little cloud icon, and had I used any other graphics, let's say any logos or anything else, had I brought them over from my Creative Cloud library, they would all be links. They wouldn't actually be directly embedded into this file. So when I go to share this PSD document, those would be missing graphics or missing assets. So there's two ways to fix it. One would be to simply embed that layer. So I'll right click on this image and go down to embed linked. I'll click on that, and now it'll turn this from a cloud element into a smart object, and it'll maintain that visibility in that layer, in that document, so you can just share the one document and you're in good shape. I'm going to hit Command Z. The other way around this is to come up here to File, down to Package, and throw it anywhere you want. It'll create a new folder for you. So I'll throw it right on my desktop. I'll hit Choose. And what it's going to do is package up all of the links and all of the assets for this document. So it made a new folder for me. It created a links folder for me where we have that JPEG layer that will be linked up when we open this new PSD. And then we also have the editable PSD file. So that's great. Now, one thing that I see here that it didn't bring with me is fonts. So if you remember at the beginning of this, we used the font Oswald, which is not currently included in our type kit. So you would want to make sure that you send that font along too, just in case the person who's opening this up didn't have that font to use. Other than that, that's pretty straightforward. So hopefully that helps you out. The last thing I would do would right click on this and compress it or send it to a zipped folder just so it's easier to share.